Well, the pandemic has kept us cooped up for 18 months and we're getting a little stir crazy.
You know, that marital bliss isn't what it's cracked up to be.
So we really need to hit the road here.
Our first stop is in Ohio at Geneva-on-the-Lake State Park Campground.
It was quite a blustery day when we arrived.
While registering, I met a fellow camper who recommended the Old Mill Winery for dinner. It turned out to be a wise choice. Oh, I meant a wine choice. Loved their mussels and toasted baguette to go with the wine.
The sunsets were gorgeous over Lake Erie. That night we slept in the car and fell asleep after watching Midsomer Murders on TV. On day 2, we headed to Rochester, New York, where we visited the Susan B. Anthony House and Museum. While there, we did a little bit of geocaching, checking out where she actually voted. Also in Rochester, he visited the George Eastman Mansion and Museum. They had a lot of beautiful exhibits, learned a lot about photography and camera equipment in general.
Every room in the mansion was staged as a scene from a different movie. Camping was a little more challenging this year due to the pandemic. Advance reservations were required with a minimum 2-night stay.
Nonetheless, we do really enjoy camping on these road trips.
It gives us the opportunity to explore new state parks.
Occasionally on these trips, we will stay in a motel, but when we do, we certainly miss the beautiful sunsets like you're seeing here.
Sunsets and hiking are all good, but I'm really here for the wine. On my continued quest to find a bold, dry red wine, I focused in on the Seneca Lake Wine Trail. On our 2019 trip to the Finger Lakes, I found only 2 wineries with really good red wines. This trip, I intended to visit those 2 again, and perhaps, hopefully, add a couple more to my preferred list. The pandemic dramatically changed wine tasting. New requirements were advance reservations with payment, the wearing of masks, and a specific 1-hour time slot. At Ravines, our first stop, I sat at a small table outside and chose the expressive red flight to taste.
Despite Margie's extensive online research, not every winery can be a winner.
At Billsboro, the wines I came to taste were not being served. I chose instead to have a glass of their only red. Kinda tasteless, definitely not bold.
The Boatyard restaurant in Ithaca was one of our favorite restaurants from the previous trip. We made sure we planned a couple of dinners here. After checking in to be seated, we had a little time to look around. So we explored the area, and Margie always enjoys sitting by the water.
But the primary reason we come back is that Klaus really loves the sizzling cookie.
You can't wine taste first thing in the morning. You usually have to wait to a decent hour. So we took the time to explore the town of Geneva for a little bit before we went on to our first winery. Turns out that there's a lot of Genevas in the U.S., not to mention the main Geneva in Switzerland. We explored along the lakefront here in Geneva, did a little geocaching. The water in Seneca Lake is extremely clear and we were able to see the fish. At McGregor Vineyard, we arrived a little bit before our appointed time So we went around back just to check out how they actually make their wines.
Wine tasting was on the deck with a beautiful view. Although the wine was lackluster, the small snack plate of cheese, chocolate, pesto, and crackers was the best we encountered. At Shaw's, we met the winemaker outside. This was one of my favorite wineries from the last trip. They had really great wines. The wines are still great, but the tasting experience just wasn't as good as the last time, maybe due to the pandemic. However, that didn't prevent me from buying 6 bottles.
I might like my sizzling cookie, but Margie loves her cannolis.
Made a special stop for this well-reviewed cannoli. Had looked forward to it all trip. I was sorely disappointed as it tasted like a graham cracker.
Any visit to the Finger Lakes region has to include a stop at the Watkins Glen State Park. In particular, you would want to take a hike up the Gorge Trail. There are numerous beautiful waterfalls. The trail itself winds up stairs, across bridges, and through tunnels. You get a really great view of the canyon.
While walking along the Gorge Trail, I encountered a snake. Luckily, it was gone by the time Klaus arrived.
Get the drum rolling on like a rolling stone. Sing song when I'm walking home. Jump up to the top of the brown. Ding dong, call me on my phone. Nice tea and I'll get my ping pong. This is dead heavy. Can't hit the baseball. I'm ready. Life's sweet as honey.
Not everyone may walk to the top, but we enjoyed the hike all the way up. And then we returned via the Rim Trail just to get a different perspective of the gorge on the way down.
This was our favorite hike from our last trip here, and it is still our favorite hike.
There are numerous waterfalls in the region. Anywhere that you drive, you'll see them along the roadways. We made a quick stop here at Chiquagua Falls before we headed off to dinner for the evening.
Tonight we had dinner at another of our favorite restaurants, the Village Marina in Watkins Glen. Of course, outdoors and overlooking the water, and plenty of time for drinking several glasses of local wine.
The following day, we headed off for a little sightseeing adventure at the Corning Glass Museum. This is something that I had wanted to do, but Margie wasn't really keen on it. But it was a pretty good display of artwork, glass blowing, and well, I guess they had a little souvenir shop as well. But I was impressed with the glass blowing demonstrations. They had several of them that you could attend because not only could you stand right up front and watch it, but if there wasn't room for you to be in the front row, they were all well televised on screens right above you.
This is a technique that's more difficult to make a connection because adding a connection point later, it's just more likely that you'll run into a problem with breaking the glass. But as long as it's hot, this is a perfect opportunity for me to put a little stem on there.
Had a little extra time, so we visited J.R. Dill, known somewhat for their reds, but no advance reservations were required. This was a fun experience, as I got to have several redos of the wine tastings, so I ended up buying 2 bottles.
There's a greenway that runs right through the town of Ithaca, Cascadia Gorge, and it goes all the way up to Cornell University. Along the way, you'll see a number of waterfalls. I think there's around 8 or so waterfalls. We took the opportunity to do a little geocaching along the way, and that got us to looking for fossils, as that was one of the geocaches that we had to find. The source of the water is actually Lake Beebe at Cornell University. We found a really good way to explore Cornell University campus. It's situated high above Ithaca and Cayuga Lake. There happened to be a geocache called an Adventure Lab, which required us to make several stops along the way. That evening we were back at the Boatyard Grill, and Margie got to enjoy her wine at Lookout Point while waiting to be seated. We had discovered that there was some seating on the side of the restaurant, not very popular with most, but we enjoyed it a lot because it's where the boaters who come in to dine have to dock, and it's fun to watch these guys struggle to tie up their boats.
Thirsty Owl was a last-minute addition with no advance reservations needed. Very generous pours, redos, and I purchased 3 bottles. This may be my new favorite. Our last winery, and one of our favorites from the last time, is Shalestone. Quote, "Red is all we do." Last time we met for 2 hours with winemaker. This time we sat in a wine tasting room with 4 other tables. Disappointing experience, but the wine was still good. I bought 3 bottles.
I was impressed with the fact that the winemaker actually built all of his own furniture for the tasting room. What would a trip be without a death march? The next day we found a little hidden gem called Grimes Glen County Park. On this trip we were going to take a hike up to 2 waterfalls. However, the trail only went a short distance, and from that point on you needed to walk in the stream bed itself to get to the waterfalls. This was quite a lot of fun. Along the way to the first waterfall, I decided to look for some geocaches, and there just happened to be a geocache at the first waterfall. While Margie was enjoying the view of the first waterfall, I started my search for the geocache, which just happened to be on the opposite bank from this waterfall.
Nothing to hold on to.
Eventually, Margie found it more interesting to film my escapades than watching the waterfall.
No way down.
I never did find the geocache, so we continued upstream, carrying our hiking boots in plastic bags while wearing our water shoes. Eventually we reached the second and final waterfall, which was quite beautiful. I saw several people climbing up the muddy hill next to the waterfall. It looked like a lot of fun, as they had to work their way along a ledge holding onto a rope, so I attempted to do the same without much luck.
I was anticipating another fall on this slippery slope.
But I managed to ease my way down. Margie rolled up her short shorts and started to explore the plunge pool lagoon. Unfortunately, the short shorts weren't short enough, as she managed to dip herself a little. Undeterred, though, she spotted a cave across the plunge pool that she wanted to check out. So I was hoping for another slippery fall. But she did a pretty good job this time. All in all, we had a really fun day, and I think we'd like to come back here sometime. On our last trip, we had stopped at Leckworth State Park in New York and thought it was really interesting and fun. So we had planned a couple of days to come back and explore some more. It turns out we had really seen everything that we needed to see, except for this Morris Dam, which was quite interesting, and we also did some hiking along the river. But that was about all that we wanted to do, so we hightailed it home after just one day here.